So the semester project, the goal behind this assignment is to specialize in a part of the VFX pipeline that you enjoy, an area where you'd like to improve, or an area that you'd like to practice. The goal is not to create an entire shot from scratch, but rather to focus on an area of visual effects. So you've all read this, you know the drill. I'm not going to repeat the brief again, but the idea really here is to create a small part of a shot and to use that as a showreel piece, and to really go to town on making that look good or make that technically good or excellent. It's about focus. And the brief here is to create, some options is to create a really good set extension in Nuke, to create a camera track of a very difficult shot, if that's the case, if you want to go into camera tracking, to roto a complex shape such as an explosion, to create a beauty shot of someone, to create a simulation or a specific effect in Houdini, or just to pull a really difficult green screen key, or to render something that looks really realistic. So the idea here is to follow through on one task and to have something that you can show for it, to actually have a task that you can present as part of your showreel at the end of the day, that you can see, that you can show, look, I'm a really good roto artist, if that's the case, or look, I'm a really good simulation artist. I didn't comp the rest of the shot, I didn't do a set extension, but I did a really good roto, or a really good sim, or a really good green screen key. And these are things that employers are going to look at. They're going to look at, well, of course, you're not going to hire necessarily somebody, if you're going into a big pipeline, to do an entire shot. You're going to hire somebody who's potentially just going to be doing a certain aspect of a shot, a certain task. And you probably, if you're going to go into 2D in terms of comp, you're probably going to go into rotoscoping and plate prep. And that is removing tiny little objects, removing microphones, removing gaffer tape that's on the floor, on the ceiling, tracking markers, painting out tracking markers, prepping green screens. So in other words, not necessarily even the keying of the green, but to make sure that the green is consistent in the background. So painting out dirt, things like that. So plate prep in the 2D world. In the 3D world, you'll start off by potentially modeling. Very unlikely that you'll start off with difficult sims. Maybe you'll do a little bit of simulation or setting up of scenes in Maya. Not in Maya, in Houdini. But you'll definitely not be building the final big shots. And that's why this semester project is important. It's really designed for you to hone in on an area that you'd like to focus on without being pressured to do an entire shot and to get it looking good. So the idea here is to start off with a workflow planning document, to work on it, and then to deliver it. And this is quick. This is like a quick turnaround. It's also designed to get you to work faster. Now, I know in this scenario, you had a little bit of extra time because you had the December break. But the idea really is here to do something quick and do it well, but not necessarily to complete an entire shot. Okay, Jonathan, so I know that you really wanted to do this kind of object tracking, motion capture project. And we have spoken a little bit about it in the forums, and it is really, really difficult to do without really understanding and going through animation and setting up skeletons and IK handles and object tracking, etc. So it's really awesome that you're trying this out. It is possible with a lot of manual hand animation. The way that you are kind of doing it here, and I mean, let's look through it, is very much a 2D approach where it's this arm is only moving in a 2D plane. It's going really in terms of, you're looking at this in terms of two-dimensional. It's pivoting over here and it's rotating. And that's great that you've done it that far. As soon as you go into more of a 3D environment, it becomes really difficult. But I really like this kind of look, or what you've done here. I find it a bit difficult to understand what is going on in the front section here. All of this works for me. I can understand that this would rotate. However, also these objects, these kind of cylinders are attached to this thing, which I'm assuming would turn, but this is also attached to it. So that doesn't really make sense. This can't be attached to that and that attached to that for it to turn, but I understand that that's not really the purpose of what you're trying to do. Although these are the kind of things that, differentiate a good kind of model from a bad model. So do look at things like that. I think it is important. I think this is also a nice reference, so you can kind of see that this over here is sitting on top of this, and there's a cylinder that's pulling this up and down, and this kind of piston over here would push it. So this is definitely mimicking muscles. This would be mimicking the muscles on your forearm, not your forearm, what do you call it? The top half of your arm, whatever that thing is called. And these cylinders would mimic the muscles on your forearm to make your fingers move, and these would pull these things. So this makes sense in a type of practical method where I think your model looks the part, but it doesn't really work in terms of how would you actually rig this, how would you actually animate this, if this was a real robot arm, how are these fingers actually going to move, what would make them move. But I understand that you didn't get that far in the project. If you look at this, for example, this computer game, you can see that there's a lot of attention to detail here in terms of how this model would practically work. What is pushing what is pulling what, where are the hinges, how that works. And, just modeling something like this in itself is more than a 3-week challenge. So it's quite impressive that you've taken on all of this. I think it's a lot to take on in 3 weeks. And unfortunately, you can kind of see that you couldn't focus on anything specific because you have a robot arm that's a little bit impractical. It doesn't really work. And then you have motion capture here that is not really motion capture. It's more of a 2D animation. But I appreciate that you're trying to do it. And so the first thing that you've noticed here that's definitely happening is that because your skeleton of your robot is not lining up with the skeleton of your actual hand, you can see this tracking marker over here, which is now stuck to your hand, is in relation to your robot. It's moving the robot into the wrong position. And that's what you're seeing over here. The track is working, but you kind of have this hand which is driving this connection over here. And you would kind of have it the other way around. You would track something over here and connect it to your arm over there, and then that would drive the hand. And in something like this, you would need quite a lot of animation, quite a lot of manual animation to make this work, because doing proper match move object tracking is really difficult. You need multiple cameras solving a point cloud, and then that point cloud generates a skeleton, and it becomes quite intense. There is the Connect, by the way, and I know somebody posted this on the forums, and I've actually done a bit of motion capture using the Connect. The Xbox Connect motion capture, and you should totally have a look at this. You can maybe pick up a second-hand motion capture Connect and have a look at this, because it's pretty cool. It kicks out a fairly useful skeleton that you can use to drive things. I've got somewhere on a little social media account. I think I've got somewhere on my Instagram me dancing using a little Connect setup. Come on, show us. Yep, this is the software that I think we were using. So exactly, so you can use that to drive it. Again, it's not very accurate. You need to know quite a bit about rigging to get it to work. You need to remember to start on your T-pose, and that your model needs to line up with that at the beginning of the clip, and so on. So it's definitely challenging, and I think the fact that you're trying this out is really cool. This is you developing some shaders and some textures. Just want to see this over here. I mean, it looks nice. It's definitely still not final renders. And I think what you've submitted as your final delivery is this Maya file. So I just want to open that up. Yes, that is a student version. Okay, whoop. Let me get out of here and find myself. Where am I? Okay, so okay, so you've rendered it like this, which is it seems to be on a table of some sorts. Of course, Y is upwards, so I don't know if you've modeled this kind of the wrong way up, but you know, because Y would be up, you would be modeling it like this. I just want to see, where is this camera that you brought in? Arm track over here. So you track this in something, and you have these locators that you found, and you've used like some SDK or some parenting to drive this object, it seems. Let me just get in here. Just want to see this without lights. Oh my goodness. Just want to see how this thing is moving here. Okay, well that's pretty awesome. That's really cool that you've got this all rigged up. So of course that means, you know, disregard my comments about this not really actually functioning, because of course this was just a mock-up at that point. Didn't really know that. So that's really cool how this is operating and folding. And you've got a bit of a cheat happening over there, but that's fine. You can hide that. Nobody needs to see that. What I think is really important though is that you don't really have a final product. You don't have something that you can show in terms of if you were successful in this project or not. And if we just go back to the submission criteria, you definitely need to submit some kind of breakdown showing how the task was created. And that can either be an MP4 or, well, it does ask for an MP4, but it can either be literally start off with a video of you and then how you tracked it. It could be a screen recording, and then the final render. It doesn't have to necessarily be comped in place, but the project isn't really complete without that final deliverable. It feels like it's you kind of gotten halfway and given up on it a little bit. So I do need you to hand in a project that is complete to some degree. So please do just render this guy. Just render it and create a nice breakdown that you can show and that you can upload as your first attempt at match moving, or sorry, not match moving, at motion capturing. But I'm sure you just used match moving to do it right. A artificial arm. And that'll give you a submission. It'll also allow you to pass, of course, then. And I think for what you're doing here, it's very cool. Just make it nice, presentable, finish it. It doesn't feel finished. And please submit that. Great. If you have any specific questions about this, please let me know. The, motion control, well, not motion control, the motion capture we're not really dealing with in this course. It's really, really difficult to deal with motion capture in this course. I know Maya has, I have no idea where this even is, but there used to be this it's kind of this editor, this I can't remember where it is. It was called like, it wasn't called the asset, I can't remember where it was. Old Maya had it pretty much over here, and it was this place where you had a whole bunch of rigs and you had painting tools and things. I'll find it. It was called like the Visor or something, and you could import motion capture that had been done previously. Of course, you can buy these online. There's lots of motion capture libraries online. that you can just get stuff from. So I think if you do want to use some motion capture, it's going to be almost impossible for you to go to a proper motion capture studio and record things. Have a look online on what's available, and use some of that. There's definitely going to be quite a lot of things available. What is this? Motion capture library. Here we go. This is free to download. GameRes human for motion capture. Okay, so this guy isn't motion captured yet, it seems. I'm not quite sure how this works. I just want to have a quick peek inside of Maya to see if I can find that. Let me just close this real quick. I think it's not the view. I think maybe it's the content browser. Here you go. So there are a whole bunch of things in here that you can have a look at. If you look at where would that even be? Import, effects, air, fluid, animation, motion capture. Here you go. Generic. Alright, there's a README file. Okay, this used to be a whole bunch of how do I open this now? This used to be a whole bunch of actual motion capture things. The animation examples have been moved online. Okay, let's have a look over here. This is probably where you want to have a look now. Okay, oh, it's just giving me a download link right away. So let's have a look at that once it's downloaded, and we can drop some of those into Maya. I'm not sure why it's not included anymore. But yep, I think this would be your best bet, is have a look at motion capture data that already exists if you want to use it. Shooting this yourself is really difficult, if you want to shoot it the proper way, of course. The really cheap way to shoot it is to get about 4 GoPros, sync them up, make sure that the frame rates and things are the same, and go from there. So these are straight motion capture. There's dance, there's fight, run one. I have no idea how you would even import these. Let me just double click on this Maya file and see what it gives me. Is it opening something? Yep, it's opening. So there we go. We've got a rig over here. Whoop. Come on. Has it crashed? Oh, whoops. So you can see it comes with quite a bunch of predetermined motion capture data. Where was that folder now? You can have a look at that. Drunk, cartwheel, walk, sit, walk, run. And of course you can download so many more of these. Sit, fall, jog straight. Let's open jog straight. And of course now what you want to do is you want to take video files and attach something to video file. That's really difficult. It's probably the most difficult type of motion capture that it's not even so something like Planet of the Apes would be called a on-set motion capture system, but what you're really talking about is using actual footage and motion capturing that. So it's not wearing a motion capture suit on set. It's really just manually tracking. It's painful. Anyway, that's kind of all I have to say about it. I think it's really ambitious, and what you really do need to do though is finish this project to some degree, because at the moment it's halfway, and make it something that you can show off. Make it something that you can say, well, look, this is the skills that I've got, because currently it's everything's a little bit half, and you really want to have something that's finished in a way. And I'm not talking about a completed shot. I'm just talking about maybe you make a really good model that's ready for motion capture data, or maybe you just shade it really nicely and you render some really nice close-ups. or whichever the case is. But you got to pick something and finish it. I think that's the important part here.